We've got Jay who has a question about lower ABV beers, and we talked a little bit about lower ABV beers earlier, and sometimes those smaller beers can kind of, you know, maybe lack some robustness, right?
Yes.
And I mean, it's kind of part and parcel of being, you know, 3.5% maybe. But Jay asks, what would be your top 3 tips, or just some tips for maximizing flavor and presence from a low ABV beer?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So tip number 1 is do your mash at a ridiculously at a temperature you think would not work. So I'm talking 72 degrees Celsius, and so that's really going to make your yeast have not much. There'll be a lot of unfermentable sugars in the wort, and therefore you'll get a higher finishing gravity. The beer will have a little bit more body and won't taste watery. Okay, that will be tip number 1. And believe me when I say you can do a mash at 72 degrees Celsius, you can do it. I don't know what that is in freedom units off the top of my head, but
that's probably like
70.
Get it? Yeah, it's like getting high, like 160, like high 160s, maybe low 170s. Yeah,
it is 162.
Oh, 162. Okay, so it's just on the other side of what people typically recommend, right? Yeah,
correct. Yes, yeah. So, and short, you know, 20 minutes.
I would say that's going to happen. That's going to happen in an instant too.
Really fast. Yeah,
sure.
So 20-minute mash and you're done.
Yep.
And so that would be tip number 1. Tip number 2 is, imagine if you were making a full strength, so a 5% version of the same beer. You would have some base malt, and then you would have some specialty malt. It might be some Vienna or some Munich or some crystal malt or something like that. And you're going to have those things to modify the flavor of it, right? If I was doing a low ABV beer, keeping the proportion of specialty malt goes up, because I look at base malt as just becoming ethanol, right? Just becomes alcohol. So if you write that recipe as if it's going to be a 5% beer, and then just take out base malt until the starting gravity is going to be that 3.5% beer, the percentage of specialty malt is going to be much higher, but it's going to keep the flavor in the beer, right? So that would be that's kind of, so base malt equals ethanol, right? Or equals alcohol would be the tip number 2. Tip number 3 would be, again, pH would probably be a number that would impact the flavor. So if you're going to have a 3.5%, say pale lager, its pH is going to, even if it's all malt, right, and no adjunct in it, its pH is going to be 3.8, 3.9, right? And that's kind of where you want it, because you definitely don't want it to. You don't want to aim for that typical 4.2 pH that you would for a 5% version of that same beer, because it's going to taste flabby at that pH, right? So. And that's probably the same amount of acidity in terms of grams per liter. So, yeah, very, very excruciatingly high mash temperature and short mash. Just take out base malt and leave the specialties in, and the proportion of specialty malt goes up, and also targeting a slightly lower pH as well. And then you're going to have good smashable low ABV beer. I love making them. They're really challenging because it's so hard to get a good amount of flavor from a very small package, you know.
Definitely.
And if you can execute that well, then you're doing pretty good.
Absolutely. I love that answer, by the way. I think that's, and I haven't framed it that way in my mind before, with kind of the ratio between base malt and specialty malt. I really like that. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you feel as if you got any value out of the video, please like and subscribe. There are also other videos that you can watch. They're gonna maybe be over here or over here. Appreciate you watching.